The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.
This is defense attorney Glenn Kurtzrock. After 17 years as a criminal prosecutor, I found it compelling to use my experience as an investigator and trial attorney to defend individuals accused of crimes ranging from misdemeanors to murders, assuring that the rights of the accused are protected. If you or someone you know has been arrested or accused of a crime, please call 631-539-1640. That's 631-539-1640. Anytime, day or night, any day of the week. As soon as you've been arrested or learned that you're under investigation, please call me at 631-539-1640. That's 631-539-1640. Your defense and your freedom are waiting for you, and my office is always open. Call 631-539-1640. You could visit me on the web at kurtzrocklaw.com. That's KURTZROCKLAW.com. Hey, this is criminal defense attorney Glenn Kurtzrock, and you're listening to Kurtzrock on Crime. We're going to be talking about the criminal justice system, national and local crime news, and taking your questions. I've been a criminal defense attorney for several years now. I started my career as an assistant district attorney for about 17 years, first in Nassau County, then in Suffolk. If you or a loved one have been arrested or accused of a crime, you can reach me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 631-539-1640. That's 631-539-1640. If you want to call into the show and talk, the number in the studio is 631-451-1039. That's 631-450-1039. Now, this is not a political show, but a lot of times crime and politics go hand in hand. So this is going to get into some politics today. We're going to talk a little bit about a lot of the speculation going on about what might happen to President Trump if he loses the election, or if he doesn't lose, then what might happen to him in about 4 years when, if he does win again, when he does have to leave. And there's been a lot of talk that he's concerned about potential criminal charges coming in. And he has enjoyed executive privilege and a certain presidential immunity that has prevented potential crimes from being charged. It's really something that hasn't been tested in the law, whether or not a president can be charged with a crime. And then there's a difference between federal and state crime. So one of the things that's been discussed a lot is the presidential pardon power. The president has a tremendous amount of power in terms of pardoning people who are charged with federal crimes. It's pretty much unlimited. State crimes, not so much. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But the Constitution, this wasn't an amendment, this isn't a statute. The United States Constitution, Article 2, Section 2, states that the president shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. And that's in the Constitution. That's pretty much unrestricted. The only thing that has to have happened is that the crime has to have been committed. So you can't pardon someone in advance. Basically, you can't say, all right, I am pardoning John Smith for any crime that he may commit in the future. Although there was some interest in the news media recently when President Trump stated that if his people disobey congressional subpoenas and they were arrested, he said that he would pardon them. Now, there's no legal weight to that until they actually commit a crime, contempt of Congress, for example. If they disobey a subpoena, after that happens, then he can pardon them if he wants. What's important is that the crime, it doesn't have to actually be charged. That is, you don't have to be indicted, you don't have to be arrested. The crime just has to have been committed. And this was a precedent that was set by Gerald Ford. So this is maybe before some people's time. It was just about before my time. But after President Nixon resigned and his vice president, Gerald Ford, took over, he granted a sweeping pardon to former President Nixon. Even though no crime had been charged, there was no knowledge of any pending investigations, there had been no arrests, no indictments, he pardoned him for any crime that he either committed or may have committed or taken part in during basically his entire presidency. So we're going to listen to a clip of this is actually President Ford announcing the pardon of President Nixon back in 1974.
Now, therefore, I, Gerald R. Ford, President of the United States, pursuant to the pardon power conferred upon me by Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution, have granted, and by these presents do grant, a full, free, and absolute pardon unto Richard Nixon for all offenses against the United States which he, Richard Nixon, has committed or may have committed or taken part in during the period from July 20, 1969 through August 9, 1974.
So this was huge, and a lot of people say that it was a significant factor in Ford losing re-election. It was a very unpopular decision at the time, but he basically was saying any crime that you may have done, federal crime, it cannot be charged. You cannot be convicted of it, therefore you can't be charged. Now, was this legal? That is, did that have any power? If a federal prosecutor were to have indicted Richard Nixon, would he have been able to stand up and say, well, I've been pardoned. You can't charge me. Who knows? They didn't do it. So the only way to find out would be if, after the pardon, some federal prosecutor decided to charge Richard Nixon with a crime that he committed during that time period, and then it would have gone to the courts, and then we'd have an answer. So we really don't have an answer. It's the only time it's happened. It may come up again very soon. Another thing that people have been talking about is whether or not the president can pardon himself. Trump has on more than one occasion thrown out as a sideline there that maybe he can pardon himself or that he can pardon himself. So can he? Well, we don't know. It's never been tried. It's never been done. In 1974, Nixon's lawyers suggested that the president could pardon himself, and the Department of Justice examined the issue. They wrote a memo and said, no, you can't. But again, that's not the law. That's just their belief. The only way to find out is for it to happen. So maybe we'll find out in the next couple of months. I don't know. In my personal opinion, I think that right before Trump leaves the office, whether it's in 3 months or whether it's in 4 years and 3 months, there's going to be a mass pardoning of everyone connected to him, whether they've been indicted, convicted, or under investigation. I think we're going to have pardons, blanket pardons for all of his family members, very similar to Ford's pardon. Whether he's going to pardon himself, I don't know. We'll have to find out together. I think it's 50-50. The pardon doesn't have to specify what crimes are included. It can be all crimes committed or even crimes that may have been committed. There's a really important distinction between federal crimes and state crimes. So the president gets his power from the United States Constitution, and that covers all federal charges, federal crimes that can be committed. So the president can pardon anyone for any federal crime. He cannot pardon anyone for state crimes. So if the president is charged in a state with a state crime, he's going to have to rely on that state's governor to pardon him if that state has pardon power. So the most serious concern, I think, for Trump right now is in New York. The Manhattan District Attorney has been running an investigation. The grand jury is hearing evidence. There are subpoenaed materials that have been the subject of Supreme Court decisions. And he's going to have to rely, if he gets charged in New York City, with the New York governor pardoning him. So assuming it's still Cuomo, I don't think that he's going to have a tremendous amount of luck there. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in a few minutes. We're going to take a very brief break. If you want to call in, if you have any questions, you can call in 631-451-1039. That's 631-451-1039. If you want to weigh in, if you agree, disagree, that's fine. If you have any other legal questions, I'm happy to discuss them with you. If you or a loved one have been charged with a crime and you need to speak to someone, you can give me a call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 631-539-1640. That's 631-539-1640. We're going to be back in just a minute. Welcome back. You are listening to Kurtzrock on Crime right here on LI News Radio. I'm Glenn Kurtzrock, criminal defense attorney. If you or a loved one have been charged with a crime or accused of a crime, you can give me a call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 631-539-1640. That's 631-539-1640. You can also check out my website at www.kurtzrocklaw.com. That's KURTZROCKLAW.com. If you want to call in and chat, you can reach me right here in the studio at 631-451-1039. That's 631-451-1039. So before the break, we were talking a little bit about the presidential pardon power. We were talking about the difference between federal and state crimes, and I wanted to get a little bit more into what's going on in New York right now. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office is right now investigating Donald Trump for matters we're really not sure because grand jury proceedings are secret, but it's come out that they have subpoenaed his financial records, his tax records, and there's been it's been going back and forth in court. The lower courts said that the DA's office is entitled to get those records. The appellate courts said that the DA's office is entitled to get those records. And then when it went to the Supreme Court of the United States in what some people thought was a surprising decision, they said, yeah, you know what, executive privilege does not shield the President of the United States from having to have his tax records disclosed. He can be investigated just like anybody else. And instead of saying, okay, you got to turn him over, they sent it down and said, all right, well, let's see if there's any other issues. So the president's lawyers found additional issues. Now they're saying that it's vague and overbroad, so it's going up again to the various appeals courts. I think that's a very weak argument. So I expect, although it won't happen until after the election, I expect that the DA's office is going to get those tax records, and I haven't seen them myself, but obviously there's something in there that that he doesn't want to be seen. So, question for the listeners: do you think that Trump should be prosecuted if he should lose? We don't necessarily need to have a specific crime. If there's evidence that he committed a crime, should he be prosecuted either federally or state? Personally, I believe so. I don't think that he should be shielded by the fact that he was the president of the United States. I know there's going to be a lot of arguments made that any prosecution would be political, but the problem is then you've got a situation where you have someone who can do whatever they want and hide behind this mantra that, well, it's a political prosecution. They're only going after me for political reasons. So regardless of what kind of evidence there may be that he committed a crime, he can get away with it. So that's problematic. Call in if you have any thoughts about that. there's been discussion, and this has gone on for years, even before Trump was elected, as to whether or not a sitting president can be indicted and prosecuted for the commission of a crime. It's never happened. The closest we came to something like this was a long time ago when Aaron Burr was indicted for murdering Alexander Hamilton. And that was about 220 years ago. He was actually charged in both New York and New Jersey. The charges ended up all being dropped, but he was on the run for a while. While he was the vice president of the United States, he was on the run from murder charges. But that's the closest we've come. So it was never tested in court as to whether that would stand up. So we do know that a sitting president can be sued civilly. Trump is being sued right now. You had the biggest scandal of Bill Clinton's presidency came from a civil suit when he was deposed in the Paula Jones suit, when the whole Monica Lewinsky thing happened. So a sitting president can certainly be sued civilly. And based on the Supreme Court decision that we just got, a sitting president can certainly be investigated for the commission of crimes. They said that as much when they said that the DA's office, the Manhattan DA's office, can subpoena his tax records. Whether he could be indicted, again, this is who knows, because it hasn't happened yet. So it may happen. Either he will be out of office in 3 months to the day, or if I don't think any indictments would come before then, or if he wins re-election, we may see an indictment come out of Manhattan, or possibly from the Department of Justice, or who knows what other grand jury investigations may be going on right now that haven't made it to the news, because they are what are called secret investigations. Now, in the Mueller report, Mueller stated that he believed that a sitting president could not be charged with a crime. And that was based on Department of Justice regulations and memos and opinions, which is why he was very careful. If you read his report, he was very careful in not stating whether he believed there was enough evidence to charge the president with a crime or not. What he said, and I think he did this very kind of cagily, is he said, I'm not going to say whether or not President Trump committed any crimes, because in my opinion, the Department of Justice cannot prosecute a sitting president. Therefore, it would be unfair to say whether or not I believe he committed any crimes. So you can kind of read between the lines there. And having read through the report, there certainly seems to be enough evidence that if Trump was one of the co-conspirators, but not the President of the United States, there very well may have been charges, because everyone else involved, or just about, has been indicted, prosecuted, convicted, sentenced, and I think ultimately will be pardoned. But, that question wasn't answered. So that's going to be very interesting. I'd love to hear if anybody thinks that whether a sitting president should be able to be indicted. It's a tough question, because you have to look at it in steps. Let's say, for example, hypothetically speaking, let's say, to use some of his own language, President Trump were to shoot somebody in the head on Fifth Avenue. Now, he might not lose any votes, but could he be charged with murder under state law or federal law if it happens, if he does it in Washington, D.C.? Remember that in Washington, D.C., all crimes are prosecuted federally. So what would happen? I mean, you have, it's going to be on camera. You're going to have the President of the United States shooting somebody in the head and killing them. Who's the police officer going to be that goes and puts the cuffs on him? What's the Secret Service going to do? What's going to happen in terms of booking him, bringing him before court? I mean, these are things that, well, hopefully we'll never have to find out. But, if the president can be charged with murder, then he should be able to be charged with any crime. It's not like, okay, this is where we draw the line. He could be charged with murder. He could be charged with attempted murder, but we're not going to let him be charged with tax evasion because that's less serious. Again, it's something that if he loses the election, it's not going to be something we need answered, because he'll be out of office in a couple of months. But, it's something that can certainly come up again. It would be very interesting, I think, to say the least. I believe that if there is strong evidence that the president committed a crime, certainly a prosecutor should be able to go forward and prosecute. Ultimately, it's going to be up to Congress to decide whether or not that rises to the level of an impeachment while he's under prosecution. We're going to have to see whether or not that's something that his cabinet and the vice president might use to invoke the 25th Amendment. But we'll have to see, and we may find out if he gets reelected in the next couple of years. We're going to take a break for a few minutes, and then we're going to talk a little bit now. We're going to switch over to talking about these allegations against Hunter Biden. You are listening to Kurtzrock on Crime. If you want to call in, the studio number is 631-451-1039. That's 631-451-1039. If you or a loved one have been charged with a crime or accused of a crime, you can call me 24/7 at 631-539-1640. That's 631-539-1640. This is defense attorney Glenn Kurtzrock. After 17 years as a criminal prosecutor, I found it compelling to use my experience as an investigator and trial attorney to defend individuals accused of crimes ranging from misdemeanors to murders, assuring that the rights of the accused are protected. If you or someone you know has been arrested or accused of a crime, please call 631-539-1640. That's 631-539-1640. Anytime, day or night, any day of the week. As soon as you have been arrested or learned that you're under investigation, please call me at 631-539-1640. That's 631-539-1640. Your defense and your freedom are waiting for you, and my office is always open. Call 631-539-1640. You could visit me on the web at kurtzrocklaw.com. That's KURTZROCKLAW.com. Hey everyone, this is Glenn Kurtzrock. Welcome back to Kurtzrock on Crime. You're listening to us here on 103.9 LI News Radio. If you or a loved one have been charged with or accused of a crime, don't hesitate to give me a call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 631-539-1640. That's 631-539-1640. Or you can visit our website at www.kurtzrocklaw.com. It's KURTZROCKLAW.com. And if you want to call into the show, we'd love to hear from you. You can call into the studio at 631-451-1039. That's 631-451-1039. If you're just joining us, we spent the last 20 minutes talking about the potential criminal charges against President Trump should he lose the election, or, well, one day he'll be out of the White House one way or another, and the extent of his pardon power, the difference between federal and state pardon power. But what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So we're going to talk about Hunter Biden being in the news. There's been a lot of talk now ever since the New York Post broke a story about Hunter Biden's laptop, and that's become the big talking point. Once again, a few weeks before an election, it's all about the emails. So let's talk about the emails. There's a lot different about this situation than the Hillary Clinton situation. There was no dispute that the emails discussed that were Hillary Clinton's were actually hers, and that they were on a private server and that they were deleted. And we could spend hours and hours talking about whether she had the right to do that and whether something like that she shouldn't have done or potentially expose her to criminal charges. But now you have a laptop that is purported to have belonged to Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, and there's emails on them that, according to President Trump, means that Hunter Biden should be locked up, Joe Biden should be locked up, the news media should be locked up. But there's really not much information about the emails. The one email that is the real cause for concern for the president and the people who are not fans of Joe Biden is an email that was allegedly sent in 2015 from a board advisor for Burisma. That's the Ukrainian company that Hunter Biden worked for. And this email supposedly says it's this guy is thanking Hunter for introducing him to his father, then Vice President Joe Biden. And that's it, as far as we can tell, because it hasn't been released publicly. That is the big concern. So on that basis, Trump has said that both Biden should be arrested and convicted, although he has never said what crimes they should be charged with. And we'll talk about that. First, you have to say, are there any crimes that were committed? And second, what can be proven? You have to look at it from the point of view, for me, I was a prosecutor for a long time. I've been a criminal defense attorney. So I look at every case that I'm involved in and every case I read about in the papers as both a prosecutor and a defense attorney. How is a prosecutor going to build this case? And as a defense attorney, how would I defend against it? So first, let's look at this from the prosecution point of view. So in order to prosecute, you're going to need a lot of things. First, you have to have authentication. Was this email sent from who it's claimed to be from? That is, was it sent by this person on the board of Burisma? And was it actually sent to Hunter Biden? Is it what it is claimed to be? So you have to authenticate that. And it's not enough to just say, well, we have this email. Anybody can falsify an email. Anybody can send an email out and pretend to be someone else. Was it sent from this person to Hunter Biden? The second one, and this is going to be the biggest problem for any potential prosecutor, is what's called chain of custody. So chain of custody, in a nutshell, and I could spend an hour talking about that, but in a nutshell, when you have evidence, it's very important in any criminal prosecution that you know that the evidence is what it's supposed to be, that it hasn't been changed, altered, modified, tampered with. So the easiest thing where you really need chain of custody, let's say you got a drug case. Somebody gets arrested and they have a kilo of cocaine on them. And then that cocaine, or well, let's say what looks like cocaine, it's a white powdery substance, as they say in the police paperwork. It's sent to the crime laboratory where it is analyzed, it's weighed, and someone says, yes, this is indeed cocaine and it's a kilo. So what we need to know is what happened to that white powdery substance between the time that it was taken off of the person who got arrested and the time that it was sent to the crime lab for analysis. Was it properly secured? Here in Suffolk County and most other jurisdictions, what's going to happen is you get this bag, this white powdery substance is recovered from somebody who's been arrested. It should be placed in an evidence bag. It should be sealed with some kind of evidence tape. The police officer should be putting his initials and his shield number on it and the date and time, and he should document who he gives it to. And he would come into court and say, yeah, I got this on such and such date and time. I put it in a sealed bag, and I gave it to, Detective Smith. And the Detective Smith's going to testify and say, I got this sealed bag. I didn't open it. I brought it right to the crime laboratory, and I gave it to, a crime analyst, Jones. And then Jones is going to say, yes, I received this sealed bag from Detective Smith. I opened it and I weighed it and I analyzed it. And yes, it's cocaine. Now you've got a chain of custody. But if you just have the first officer takes this bag, this white powdery substance, and says, yeah, I got it. I threw it in the back of my squad car, and it wasn't sealed or anything, and then I dropped it off at the front desk or the crime lab, and somebody must have given it to the analyst, you're going to have a problem, because how do you know that what ultimately was determined to be cocaine was actually what was taken off of this person? So there's your chain of custody. It has to be established in any criminal case with any evidence. So here, you need to have chain of custody of this a laptop that supposedly belongs to Hunter Biden. It's very murky here. So basically at the time that this laptop was dropped off, Hunter Biden was living on the West Coast. So allegedly, he flies from the West Coast to Delaware, and he leaves his laptop at a computer store, which they say now is run by a blind man, and then he never came back for it. And then this man at some point realized that he looks on the laptop somehow and says, I have something here which is important. And he contacts the FBI. And then he turns it over, I think, to Steve Bannon, who turns it over to Rudy Giuliani. And there's a potential Russian agent involved in this somehow. And now Rudy Giuliani has it, even though it's been over a year and a half. It's only coming out now 2 weeks before the election when the president's poll numbers are significantly down. So that's going to be a question. That's going to be a problem if they want to prosecute. The chain of custody. How was this handled? Who looked at it? Who touched it? Who had access to it? After chain of custody, even if you can establish that, are the contents true? Let's say we establish it's Hunter Biden's laptop. Let's say we establish that this was sent from this person from Burisma to Hunter Biden. Are the contents true? That is, did Hunter Biden actually introduce his father to this person? Did it actually happen? There's no record of the two men ever meeting. Joe Biden's schedules from when he was vice president are all public. He has stated in no uncertain terms that he never met anybody from Burisma, certainly not this person. There's no evidence that these two men ever met in terms of his schedules, phone records, anything like that. So even if this email was sent, there's no evidence that they actually met. And then fourth, we get to a really important question, which is, so what? So what? Assuming everything else shakes out. Assuming the email, that this is Hunter Biden's laptop, the email is what it purports to be. It was sent to Hunter Biden by this Burisma executive and thanking him for introducing him to Joe Biden, and Joe Biden actually met this guy. Okay? So what? If the two men actually met, you have to demonstrate that as a result of that meeting, either the meeting itself was criminal or that Joe Biden took some criminal action for some reason. It's not clear that what is being alleged, other than the fact that the email exists, that there was any crime that was committed by Joe Biden. That's the concern here. We got a caller. Let's hear from Danny from Center Moriches, line 1.
Hello?
Danny, hey, you're on. How you doing?
Very good. I got a question for you. What you're saying is 100% right. But when it comes to Trump, none of that, how come none of that worked? You know what I'm saying?
What are you talking about? In terms of, like, chain of custody and all that other stuff?
Yeah, exactly. The FISA warrants were bad. Everything was bad. And what you're saying was right. So how come it didn't apply to that?
Well, that's certainly going to be a concern. Remember, President Trump has not been charged with anything yet. There are investigations going on, and we're not privy to the contents of those investigations. We know the grand jury has subpoenaed his tax records. There's really no chain of custody with tax records. They are what they are. You get them from the IRS. They're his tax records. They're going to see what expenses were made. Apparently, it looks like they're looking to see if there's some kind of tax fraud. But there are no investigations with Trump right now that have to do with, something, say, like an email or a phone call or something that we have to say, hey, is this what it's purported to be? You understand what I'm saying?
Right, but now let me ask you a question. Now with Hunter Biden, isn't he just go to the banks and just look at where this money's coming from and he's getting? Isn't that pretty easy?
Well, sure. I mean, they can certainly get bank records, and they're going to have to establish, if they get the bank records, they're going to have to establish that the money was illegally paid to him somehow. I don't think that he's disputed the salary that he got. I know there's been discussion over whether he deserved it or whether he might have gotten the job if he wasn't the son of the vice president. But the real concern, I think, for voters has to be not whether or not Hunter Biden did something wrong, which is, it'd be interesting to find out, but, how that affects Joe Biden, whether Joe Biden did anything wrong.
Right.
Because Hunter Biden's not running for president.
No, I gotcha. But one more thing.
Sure.
You guys go after Trump with the taxes. Did you guys ever read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad from Robert Kiyosaki?
Yes.
He explains all of that and how the best tax rate is to be in real estate, and you hire these guys where you don't have to pay taxes. I mean, And
Well,
Joe Biden, he's been in there for 40 years. Wouldn't he change the loophole? The loopholes and stuff.
I can tell you that the Manhattan District Attorney's Office has pretty good forensic tax analysts, and they're going to take a look and see if anything was done beyond just good business. See if he did anything wrong. Danny, thanks for the call. Going back to this laptop and the laptop coming in the way it did, and Rudy Giuliani somehow getting it. It's notable that many former intelligence operatives, dozens and dozens, both Democrats and Republicans, people who work for both Democratic presidents and Republican presidents, and even some who have worked for Trump, have said that while they haven't seen the laptop, but they said that in their opinion, they believe that this has all the hallmarks of a Russian disinformation campaign to hurt Joe Biden right before the elections, that it's all very suspicious, the manner in which it was turned over, that this is exactly what would be in the playbook of the Russians to interfere with the election. And looking at the manner in which they're doing it, it's designed, if that's what is going on, it's designed to hurt Joe Biden. And Giuliani himself, and it was surprising that he actually said this. I don't know if he realized he was saying it when he said it, but he was talking about this guy that he got the laptop from, and he said, well, it's 50-50 that he's a Russian spy. So that was very telling. Ordinarily, if this is somebody that you're in business with, or it's a friend of yours or an associate of yours, when I'm talking about my friends and colleagues and associates, I'm not 50-50 on whether they're a Russian spy or any other kind of spy. I'm 100% that they're not. So for Rudy Giuliani, who, in my opinion, and I was a big fan of his 20 years ago when he was the mayor, I think that he has, in the past couple of years, just completely demolished any credibility that he has with the American people. I think he was a great prosecutor when he was the U.S. attorney, notwithstanding they said he was kind of a media whore. But I thought he was a great prosecutor. I thought he was a great mayor. And he's all in on Trump. Another thing that I thought was very interesting and maybe most telling is the reporter for the New York Post who broke this story, the reporter who did most of the work on this story. They refused to put their name on the article because of concerns about the credibility of the sources. And ultimately, the decision was made from someone who was above this reporter's pay grade to release this story. But the actual reporter who did all the work, who did the investigation, who spoke to the sources, was so concerned about the credibility that they had their name taken off of what, would potentially be the story of the year. Why would a reporter who works for the Post, who, it's all about getting the byline, why would they take their name off of maybe the biggest story of their career due to credibility issues? And if the investigative reporter looked into it, is worried about the credibility of the sources, I think that we should be worried about the credibility of the sources. In my opinion, looking at it from the point of view as both a prosecutor and a defense attorney, and let me tell you that if somehow charges are brought against Hunter Biden, and should he choose to give me a phone call, I would love to handle this case as a criminal defense attorney. Not that I'm going to hold my breath for that phone call to come in, but there is so much to pick apart in these allegations that I can't imagine. First of all, I can't imagine charges will ever be brought. Whether Trump wins, loses, there's just nothing there. To call for arrests and indictments, those are political statements. It's certainly premature, given the extreme weaknesses in these allegations, the evidentiary issues, and the fact that so far we have not heard, other than lock him up, lock up Hunter, lock up Joe, we haven't heard lock them up for what? There's not been a single allegation of a crime that was committed by either of them. So any prosecution is certainly going to have it's going to have to be a lot stronger. They're going to have a heck of a lot more if they're going to go forward. So I think that this is something that it's a last-minute, last-ditch effort to try to poke some holes in the Biden train, but I don't think it's going to be successful. I guess we'll find out in a couple of weeks, but we'll have to see. So today we covered the pardon power of the president. Tomorrow, in 2 days, we're going to see the final debate. I'm sure this is going to come up. Maybe if Joe Biden was listening to this show, he'll have a couple of points he could bring up. But again, I won't hold my breath for that. But it's going to be very interesting because I'm sure Trump's going to bring it up. I'm very interested to see how Biden responds to these allegations. Folks, I'd like to thank you for listening to Kurtzrock on Crime. You can listen in every Tuesday at 5 p.m. right here on 103.9 LI News Radio. This is Glenn Kurtzrock. Again, if you or a loved one have been arrested or accused of a crime, you can reach me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 631-539-1640. That's 631-539-1640. Or you can go to my website at www.kurtzrocklaw.com. That's www.kurtzrocklaw.com. 631-539-1640. I hope everybody has a great night, and we'll be talking to you again next week.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily